We have with us today Jason Esteves. I'm supporting Jason for his race for governor, so I need to disclose that right at the start, but that shouldn't change any of the discussion that we have. A little background on Jason. He's a business person, has a couple of restaurants around the state. He is an attorney with a lot of experience there. He has a wife who is a nurse practitioner, and I believe he's a father. So, Jason, anything else personal you'd like the voters to know about you?
No, I think you laid it out. First and foremost, I am a husband to my wife Ariel, who is a nurse practitioner from Albany, Georgia, and yes, I am a father, uh, parent of two young children, 10-year-old Jaden and 7-year-old Zoe. And yes, we do own small businesses across the state and employ about 100 people. That I'm a caregiver of, or was a caregiver of a mom with Alzheimer's. She recently passed away, but we cared for her for about 10 years. So I've seen our senior care crisis firsthand. All this stuff is what I bring to the table. I'm someone who has a lot of lived experiences. I've seen the challenges that Georgians are facing each and every day firsthand. And I think that's going to help me as governor of this state as I tackle issues that have been plaguing the state for over a generation.
Well, wonderful. So let's sort of get into what I think is the most important thing on voters' minds: a crisis of affordability.
Yeah, well, look, it's a real concern for people all across the state. And the affordability crisis reaches every single aspect of our lives, whether it's getting gas, buying groceries, renting a home, buying a home, uh, you know, going on a vacation. And what's happened is that folks across this state are working really hard. They're working 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and they feel like they're barely getting by. And then they look at billionaires and politicians in DC lining their own pockets, and they feel that the system is unfair. And at the end of the day, what people want is a fair system. They want to know that if they work hard, that they can afford the basics. They can afford to have a good life. And right now, that's not the case, especially here in Georgia, where as I go across the state, people are talking about the increased cost of housing. They're talking about the fact that they don't have access to enough good paying jobs, that they'd like to own their own business. And for those small business owners, that they're having to close down their business because of the cost of living in the state. So people generally are struggling, and that has led to our young people feeling less hope. And Gen Z in particular, Paul, um, feel that life is incredibly unaffordable, which is why many in Gen Z are having to live with roommates or live with parents because they can't afford their first home. They're having to work more gigs, more jobs, just to try to get by. And they feel like the American dream is something that is exactly that, a dream that no longer exists for too many people.
The state budget is 38 or 40 billion dollars. How can you use that to meet some of these affordability crises? Maybe we could start with housing. How do you use that state wealth to
Yeah.
actually make housing more available to people?
Yeah, what I've told people is that Georgia has resources and we also have talent to meet the needs of the people across this state. We can address a lot of the challenges, especially when it comes to affordability. What we've been missing is the leadership that prioritizes our families and prioritizes our communities, where we are giving handouts to billionaires and special interests who are able to hire lobbyists and get line items in the budget instead of putting that money and investing that into community. A small example of that is the fact that data centers today, Paul, receive about $2.5 billion in tax handouts when that money can be used to help fund affordable housing projects all across the state. It could be used to increase the child tax credit or the earned income tax credit to put money directly in the hardworking people's pockets. So when it comes to housing, for example, first of all, stop private equity funds from buying up all of our single family homes because that's led to a whole bunch of issues in the housing market. But that we also work with cities and counties to create an affordable housing trust fund across the state. And we can use some mechanisms that are already in existence in state law to do that. But at the end of the day, make sure that there's a pot of money funding that cities and counties can tap into across the state of Georgia to build more housing that is going to be needed just to meet demand. And that's important because housing is not just a problem in metro areas, whether it's Atlanta or Savannah or Columbus. It is literally a problem in rural Georgia as well. It's one of the top issues that I hear about, and the state has to make sure that we're doing what we can to provide resources so that more affordable homes can be built, so that Georgians are able to actually live in communities where they want to live.
I don't see much state dollars at all. It's using
No,
federal tax dollars, federal grants, grants for homeless programs, a variety of things. But I don't see many of those $34 billion in the housing business. Now, the Republicans have started doing a little bit of that. I think the governor put a fund together of 40 million to help communities that have new industries that he's brought in, bring the housing and connection, and that's probably a good thing. But not much of that money's going into helping people get housing.
no, it hasn't. And let me tell you, because of the lack of planning that the governor has done, he's brought these jobs, which is a good thing. But those jobs have led to increased traffic, and because of the lack of planning, the housing market in those areas have not been ready, and as a result, housing costs have gone up. So what we have to do is be more thoughtful about how we're planning communities across this state, how we're bringing economic development projects to Georgia, and make sure that we're providing the support that these cities and counties need to have the infrastructure, the roads, the land use laws updated, so that we can actually build more housing and meet the demand of the moment in each one of these regions. And we just haven't done it. And here's the thing. We can look to Republican states just like we can look to Democratic states for examples of where state government has been a significant player in ensuring that the housing market remains affordable. Whether it's a state like Florida that has a affordable housing trust fund, or whether it's a state like Virginia or Maryland where they are actively building affordable housing. I want to make sure that in this state we are using every tool possible to ensure that affordable housing is being built, including, Paul, making sure that we are streamlining our zoning laws and our housing policies, making sure that we're cutting the red tape to simplify the home building process so that we can build these homes faster and more cost efficient, because that's been another issue. We still have counties that require you to build a single family home on an acre lot, or at least an acre lot, which obviously when you have a housing crisis, a statewide housing crisis, does not make very much sense.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Healthcare is important to me. I wondered what your approaches would be to make healthcare more affordable.
Healthcare is the number one issue that people talk about all over the state. And it's because our healthcare system in Georgia is broken. It's been underinvested in, and we haven't been doing what we need to be doing to ensure that Georgians across the state, regardless of where they live, have access to the healthcare that they need. So what I want to make sure we do is that we, first and foremost, expand access to health insurance. So we have to make sure that we expand access to Medicaid. It's something that should have been done over 15 years ago, and would ensure that many Georgians have the affordable health insurance that they need. But I also want to make sure that we lower the cost of private health insurance. And Paul, that's important because right now we have over 1 million Georgians that don't have health insurance. And that makes it harder for them to get access to the health care that they need. But it also drives up the cost for those who are insured. So we have to make sure that people across the board have health insurance so that they can pay for health care. The other issue that we have in Georgia is the access issue. If you live in rural Georgia, you know that you have to drive an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to receive the care that you need, whether it's a pediatrician or OBGYN or a specialist. And I want to make sure that we're working with cities and counties across the state to build healthcare hubs so that you don't have to drive more than 45 minutes to get the care that you need. I think that's very important to helping to ensure that we tackle our maternal mortality crisis, for example, that we have that makes Georgia one of the most dangerous states to give birth as a mother, or whether it's to help our seniors who need better access, faster, quicker access to medical care.
In your experience in the Senate over the last 4 years, Have you found some Republicans that are likely to join you in that issue?
Without a doubt, and I don't want to give Republicans too much credit because they have refused to expand Medicaid for far too long, but they know the consequences of their failures. They've seen the number of uninsured Georgians go up. They've seen the number of rural hospitals closing go up, and they've seen jobs leave rural communities. And the fact that people aren't getting the health care that they need. So in 100 out of 159 counties in this state, we're seeing more deaths than we're seeing births. That's not a good thing. And the one of the main solutions to that is by ensuring and increasing access to healthcare. So I believe, Paul, that I can work with Republicans in the legislature to expand access to Medicaid. I also believe that I can work with them to lower the cost of private health insurance. And Democrats and Republicans alike understand that you can't necessarily build your own wealth unless you have health. And that's what makes healthcare so much more important.
Revenue. And in looking at the last session of the leadership from the Republican side, they want to kill the income tax. They want to take away the property tax from homesteads. How do you go about funding the services that we need if you eliminate all the revenue?
Yeah, so I think I want to make sure that people understand my general philosophy on government overall, which is that government should be the great facilitator, making sure that we work with nonprofits, with for-profits, with government actors, with people, with community, to ensure that people are getting the services that they need, whether it's provided by the government or provided by some other entity. And that means that there needs to be some resources to ensure that people can have public safety, can have public health, transportation. There are all kinds of things that your taxes pay for that we as a collective need. And look, I don't like paying taxes. I don't know many people who do like paying taxes. But at the end of the day, what I want to make sure we do is that we have a government that works for you. And that means we need some revenue. I do not agree with eliminating the state income tax along with eliminating the state property tax. I think that is it's not responsible governance. What I do believe we should be doing is looking at ways to cut taxes for the hardworking people of the state. And I believe that we can do that by taking a lot of the handouts that are currently going to special interests and to billionaires and redirecting that money into people's pockets. We've seen that increasing the child tax credit, increasing the earned income tax credit, making sure that we give small businesses tax credits and deductions, puts money directly in the pockets of the hardworking people of the state, and it spurs the economy. So I want to make sure that we are focusing tax cuts in the areas where it matters the most, and that's with the people of the state. I think that's where Republicans have gotten lost. I saw there was a report, Paul, earlier this morning that came out in the local newspaper in Atlanta that talked about the fact that Republicans were harping on the fact that there were too many tax handouts. Yet this legislature, they increased the number of handouts by $3 and only cut $1 of the handouts that they were giving out to special interests. And I'm like, they're clearly talking out of both sides of their mouth. What I want to make sure we do is that we use dollars responsibly and that we're smart about how we give tax relief. I worked, for example, with the school board of Atlanta when I was the state senator to bring about a $1,000 tax relief package for each senior living in the city of Atlanta. It takes $1,000, increases the homestead exemption for city school taxes for seniors, and it took off $1,000 off of tax bills across the city for those seniors who were paying school taxes. The hit on the school system was about $10 million, something that the school system was able to plan for and ensure that it did not impact the operations of our schools and the services it was providing to our students. That's the kind of partnership that we can have across this state to ensure that hardworking people get some tax relief, and at the same time, we continue to provide services to the people who need it the most.
Well, let's talk a little about education because you have a wonderful background in that. Are any reforms out there stand out to you for how we should approach the democratization, if you will, of our education system?
First and foremost, Georgia has a literacy crisis where 70% of our children are not reading on grade level by the time they reach fourth grade. That's a big problem, Paul, and it's worse than Mississippi, by the way. And we can't be behind Mississippi in anything, so it's an imperative that we fix that. And the best way to solve our literacy crisis is by investing in early education, and that's why I talk about bringing universal child care to Georgia, making sure that those parents of children under the age of 5 can actually afford childcare. And that's important because it allows those parents to go to work. And at the same time, those kids are in a safe space where they can get the building blocks that they need to know so that they can learn how to read, write, and do math. So that would help solve our literacy crisis. But then on the back end of the educational journey, when they're young adults, I want to make sure that they have pathways to good paying jobs, regardless of which path they choose. If they go into the military, then I want to make sure that Georgia is one of the best states to live as a veteran. If they want to go to college, then I believe that we need a needs-based scholarship on top of the Hope Scholarship to make sure that kids actually finish because of what you pointed out, which is the rising cost of tuition. And if they want to go directly into work out of high school, then I believe that we should be celebrating those who go into the skilled trades just as much as we celebrate those who go to college. So I want to make historic investments in apprenticeship programs and in a free technical college system so that we're giving folks an opportunity and restoring that purpose in the lives of our young people. And Paul, that has the added benefit of restoring hope in the future of this state and in the generations that are losing hope because of what they see as a dream that's slipping away from too many.
When you got your staff around you in the governor's office, the first day, what's the first thing you're going to tell them you want to get them working on?
Yeah. Well, look, the first thing I want them working on is expanding access to healthcare as quickly as we can and bringing some relief to the pockets of Georgians across this state. And that's going to be in the form of looking at ways to expand access to Medicaid and make sure that we're reversing the deadly abortion ban. And it also means looking at ways to end some of the tax handouts that are going to special interests and put that money into people's pockets by the end of the first session. That's what I would work on immediately. People need relief in Trump's economy, and I'm going to provide it for them.
The big question, I think, on Democrats' minds is who's going to win in November. We got a choice between a variety of people. What is your argument for why you be the best candidate to win in November?
Yeah, because I'm the only candidate in this race that's building a multi-generational, multiracial coalition. And that's the only way we win. We know the blueprint. Raphael Warnock, John Ossoff, and Stacey Abrams gave it to us. And that is having a candidate that has the right message, but is also able to appeal and excite our base, progressive and moderate Democrats, and at the same time appeal to independents and those disaffected Republicans. And I have the lived experiences, I have the vision for the future of the state that excites our base and at the same time appeals to independents and doesn't scare those disaffected Republicans that are looking for a new home. And because of that, I'm the only one in this race that can build that broad-based coalition that is going to beat Burt Jones or Rick Jackson or whoever else they nominate. And we can't let this opportunity go to waste, Paul, because what the Supreme Court did last week in gutting the Voting Rights Act makes it absolutely necessary that we win the governor's office and ensure balance in the state of Georgia when it comes to meeting the needs of the hardworking people of this state.
Well, Jason, I thank you for your time. I hope we get a chance to talk more in the future.
I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate your support.